I am here speaking with Benjamin Weinthal of the, he reports for the Jerusalem Post. He's from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. I see you've written for many other places, for Fox and Wall Street Journal. Very, very prolific writer, which is very impressive. I just heard you speak about anti-Semitism in Europe, mostly in the context of anti-Zionism and how that's really spilling over and how there's really very little differential. If I could, just to begin with, to talk about the more traditional type of anti-Semitism in Europe, and because it's hard from an American perspective to understand the differences between all the countries, what's going on. Could you just describe very briefly, are there any capitals in Europe, and both Eastern and Western Europe, in which a person could actually walk around safely wearing a yarmulke?
It's a good question. There are, when I've talked to religious Orthodox Jews who wear kippahs, and when I've read stories, there's a level of discomfort. In fact, the Berlin Jewish community, the head of the Berlin Jewish community at one point, this was a number of years ago, said that Jews should take off their kippahs when walking around to prevent, or because the likelihood that violence would be inflicted on them. And I've read reports about Denmark, in Copenhagen, where Sweden and Denmark, where kippahs are, Orthodox Jews are told not to wear kippahs. I would imagine as an Orthodox Jew that there's great discomfort, anxiety about showing religious symbols. In certain quarters in Paris, I would imagine it's safe, the Jewish quarter. But I think last week a French Jewish school teacher was attacked. I'd read about it. I don't know if he was wearing a kippah. The other question, which you didn't ask, but I also think it's important, how safe is it to walk around wearing an Israeli T-shirt? And I would argue it's probably not safe anywhere. If you start running through the streets of major capitals with an Israeli flag and see what happens. I would imagine it would cause some level of there would be some counterattacks, whether they're oral or physical. I don't know, but I've seen that happen in Berlin and other cities where Israeli flags are shown, and there have been the police had to interfere to prevent violent attacks. I don't recall that happening any other time when there's when French flags are being shown at goodwill days, that type of thing.
Would you say that Israel's perception in Europe right now is similar to what South Africa's was under apartheid?
Is Israel's situation similar?
Yeah, no, I'm saying with the perception of the average person, the average European.
Equating Israel with the former apartheid regime? Yeah. The presence of this slander is pretty widespread in Europe right now. It's if you look at the studies, there's also a wide view that Israel is comparable to the former Hitler movement. That comparison, that parallel, is usually not. It has been roped in by journalists over the years because it's so absurd. But the apartheid attack. This notion of colonialism, occupation, discriminatory policies is widespread. It's not. I think it's one example. The head of the Social Democratic Party in Germany, Sigmar Gabriel, he's right now the deputy vice chancellor of Germany, a very important figure. Went to Israel, must have been 2 years ago, I don't recall the exact date, and went to the disputed territories, was in the West Bank, and said that, this is apartheid, horrible. So you have he was a chancellor, a potential future chancellor of Germany, equating Israel with the former apartheid regime in Germany. There was criticism, but in the end he basically didn't back away from his formulation. He was criticized on Facebook when he posted it. So that's rolling around. If that's rolling around the head of a major German politician, I think it's pretty widespread. One other example is a former member of the German Bundestag told me, I can't name him, but he participated in the Foreign Affairs Committee meetings over the years. He told me that many of these discussions from all parties, the members of the German parliament who were part of this Foreign Affairs Committee were blasting Israel as an apartheid state. I think that sums it up, because if it's on that level, although it's in camera and not in an open session in the Bundestag, if that's whirling around in their heads, you're dealing with a very dangerous situation.
Are at least the top politicians, because it seems like Angela Merkel and David Cameron certainly have been it seems to me they've been bending over backwards to at least reassure Israel of the legitimacy of the pre-67 boundaries of Israel. Is that something that's is that becoming mainstream, or is that an anomaly, or are they preaching to a different audience when they're doing that?
Well, the European Union, all 28 members, advocated a two-state solution. That's the position, roughly based on the 67 boundaries with different exchanges in terms of land. But on the other hand, Merkel is somewhat of a mixed bag. She's been very good on supporting Israel's right to self-defense, Operation Cast Lead. She was the only European politician, it should be recalled, who said Israel was right to strike back. The Brits didn't go that far. There was no other, Sarkozy didn't go that far. So to her credit, but on the other hand, she has not, during her recent visit to Israel, she said she's against boycotts of Israel. But on the other hand, she said this product label policy, where the European Union wants to label products from the disputed territories in Israel that are sold to the European Union as made in the disputed territories, and it's illegal, whatever they're going to put on these labels. Critics, of course, argue this is a new Kauf nicht bei Juden, don't buy from Jewish businesses plan from the Hitler period. The point is that Merkel did not stress or did not categorically reject this label product system. She justified it and said this is what the European policy is. So even Israel's best friend on paper is hiding behind the skirt of EU policy on this, when she should take the lead and say, we're not labeling products from any of the other territorial conflicts in the world, i.e. North Cyprus and Turkey's occupation of North Cyprus. Why are we applying this disparate treatment standard to Israel right now in terms of the disputed territories? So she's remained silent on that, and that, I think, is also, from an Israeli perspective, should be very, very troubling.
Okay, thank you. On a different topic, it seems to me that there's certainly a significant subpopulation of Europe that is, generally right wing, that is, clearly anti-Islamic. There's, and it's gotten to the mainstream. Switzerland doesn't allow mosques, or the minarets, and France was stopping, women from wearing the thing. Do you see that? I mean, I think, but I just want to know if you agree. The more recent things about kosher slaughter and about circumcision, do you see that as being an anti-Semitic thing, or as being mostly an anti-Islamic thing that happens to be spilling over into Jews, or something else?
I think the anti-circumcision movement in Europe is anti-Semitic. It's clear. The Europeans, some of the comments in terms of attacking this as part of a backward part of religion, a smack of some really vile stuff from the 30s. So I see it as largely driven by anti-Semitism. It's disturbing because it's, again, this classical anti-Semitism is rearing its ugly head. But I think, again, it's a barometer of what's happening in Europe, because the Europeans are attacking Jews on multiple fronts. Israel, kosher slaughter, circumcision, and attacking the Muslim community in terms of the dietary laws and what's required. I mean, it would be, I've seen some alliances formed in Europe between Jews and European Jews and European Muslims to counter some of these measures. That's encouraging, but it should be used as a means to also undercut this ubiquitous form of Islamic anti-Semitism that's coming from many of these communities. I've seen that's been dealt with in a very gingerly way, very old, super cautious way, if it's dealt with at all. It's really scraping the surface, and again, it's rarely or scarcely done as far as I know. There's some groups, NGOs, that try to do it, but again, I think that has to be done. That's another discussion. But what's interesting in terms of your question is you could use this as it's sort of a bundle of potential in some way. I mean, you could turn these horrible negatives into positives and work with European Muslims. This may sound a bit starry-eyed. Work with these groups and try to create common interest and begin to discuss the larger issues, not the largest, but the issues involving anti-Semitism within Muslim communities.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much.